Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Facebook Live event. I am Mike Maddox, CEO of ASK. According to my job description, that means I get to come in early, stay late, and deal with everything nobody else wants to deal with, I think. And with me is the lovely and talented Josh Gembala.
I think thanks.
Josh is the manager of our Enhanced Security Services team here at ASK. Our ESS team at ASK was launched in 2015 after seeing an incredible spike in cybercrime over the last couple of years prior to that. We got together and formed a team of just incredibly talented cybersecurity experts led by Josh, who get up every day in an effort to fight cybercrime in businesses that we serve. Josh's team does everything from user education to security assessments to live security monitoring tools. You name it, you guys do it, right?
We try, yeah.
So that's what they do. And this is the first of a new thing that we're doing. It's a quarterly security update. And each quarter we're going to do this on Facebook Live, where I get Josh in a chair and we talk about key things that have happened over the last quarter in the world of cybersecurity. So that's what we're here to do. Did somebody tell you that before we sat down?
They did, and
okay.
we've got a kind of a list of stuff that's gone on in the last few months.
It's been a busy quarter, but you could say that about any quarter when you're talking about cybersecurity. That's exactly right. So boiling it down to just a few things, our goal is to talk about what they were and what they mean to you as a business owner. And so Josh, let's start with the Atlanta ransomware event. Can you first define what it was? I mean, what happened?
Sure. So the city of Atlanta ended up with ransomware in their environment, and it spread from the initial environment that it got into to another one and then to another one, and the result was that they ended up with multiple systems being inaccessible. People couldn't make payments on bills. I believe water bills were unavailable, and quite a few services. Actually, as of yesterday, there were still services that they didn't have available.
Well, when did this occur?
It happened, I believe, it was about a week ago now, maybe 2 weeks.
So we're sitting here in March of 2018. So it was fairly recent.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we know why? I mean, what caused the initial?
Well, we can guess based on what we're assuming the type of ransomware to be, that this is similar to all the other big ransomware attacks. It has to do with systems that aren't patched, public-facing assets, so things you can see from the outside that you probably don't want to be available.
So public-facing asset. So you're talking about a server or a piece of their infrastructure, their IT infrastructure that is available to a bad guy on the outside and should not be available. There's a way to plug that and keep people from
the most common ways that you end up with ransomware is from those public available assets. So things like remote desktop servers are a good example of something you don't really want the entire world to be able to see. And having unpatched systems in the environment makes it pretty easy to use publicly available exploits, things like Eternal Blue.
Okay, and just to define that, so an unpatched system, Microsoft, other software providers offer patches for known vulnerabilities in your infrastructure, and they send those out, and you should apply them or have a qualified consulting company like ASK, there's a plug, apply them for you. If you don't, the bad guys are looking for you. They're looking for the assets that are not patched.
They have easily usable exploits that they can work with in order to compromise that individual machine.
So we think that's what happened here in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, ransomware is pretty straightforward. There's only a handful of ways that it usually comes in. One thing though that we didn't mention is phishing is obviously a great way to get ransomware into an environment too.
Yep.
But I would almost say that the ransomware isn't the most important part of this.
Okay.
The problem that they have is that they didn't implement even basic security mechanisms. So regardless of how it got in there, you have a big flat network that's easy to move from one machine to the next machine to the next machine. They could have got ransomware in there and it only affected one machine. But
right.
Because of the way things were built and how long they had let some security mechanisms go, it was much worse.
So this gets back to, it sounds like what you're saying is it gets back to what I say all the time in talking to business owners, which is it's not a matter of if you're going to get ransomware or you're going to get a cyber breach, it's when. And the real question is, what systems do you have in place to identify it and stop it? And in this example, not much. So it started to spread.
Yeah, I thought it was really telling that yesterday the the mayor of Atlanta said that, cybersecurity is now their number one priority. And that makes me kind of laugh a little bit because this isn't anything new.
Right.
NHS was compromised with ransomware last year. There have been a ton of big breaches that someone should have said cybersecurity is our number one priority way before yesterday.
Way before it happened, absolutely. Okay, and so they're in the middle of that mess, and it's still unresolved, and they're still trying to work their way out of that.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be a while. Even once they do get all of the systems back online, there's a chance that they're going to find things down the road. And
they're a government entity, so they're going to get their revenue to pay for it from the good folks of Atlanta. Businesses are going to have to find that revenue from the owners or the stockholders, and that's a scary proposition.
Yeah, and not that obviously the city of Atlanta is probably watching us right now on Facebook Live, but
well, I think they are.
Yeah,
a lot of fans in Atlanta.
If we could make a recommendation to them, mine would be don't do what so many other companies do, and that's once you get this ransomware resolved, once you get everything back online, their first reaction is going to be start what we call the IT purge, where they're going to go through and they're just going to start dropping IT people like it was somehow, like they should have had this as their number one priority when it wasn't anyone else's. Good cybersecurity programs start with the people that are in charge.
Yeah, we say that all the time. We're talking to businesses. Cybersecurity policies, good ones, start from the top down. They have to be corporate-wide and cultural.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's switch gears a little bit. So private company, not a private company, but not a government entity, Orbitz, the travel company. Tell me what happened there.
So Orbitz, unfortunately, had a breach that led to access to their credit card numbers that they had on file, about 880,000 of them. Wow. It's another, I'm sure everyone that's watching this has probably had a credit card or two reissued. If not in the last year, in the last couple months even, there have been a lot of high-profile credit card breaches in the past. Everything from Target, Wendy's, Orbitz. This isn't going away.
Right. Yeah. It's where the money is.
Yeah. There's so many ways to get in.
Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is.
Right.
Credit cards. Why do you attack credit cards? That's where the money is.
Yeah, absolutely. They can be sold online for depends on how old the data is and everything else, but they can sell these, they can trade them. There are specific places on the internet that are just dedicated to carding, so buying and selling of stolen credit cards.
So that's something that a lot of people don't realize, I think, Josh, and we should touch on that real quickly, is on the dark web, right? So this is the internet that's not used by the majority of us decent law-abiding citizens, but there's a dark web that you can log into with a browser called Tor. And you can go out there and you can say, I want to buy X amount of stolen credit cards with X amount of money available on them. Right. And you're paying pennies on the dollar, obviously, and they do it in volume. People don't realize that that's available and that's out there, and that's how these people make their living.
And this started in 2016. So these cards a lot of these have already probably been used.
Right. But it's an ongoing threat. I mean, this kind of thing happens all the time, as you mentioned.
It does. Not only that, but why? My argument would be here that why do banks never release the information themselves?
We have a question from online. I think. How many cards?
880,000 is what the estimate was.
880,000. Yeah. 880,000. That's a lot. It's not a lot. It depends on the size of the breach, but if you're one of the 880,000, that's not good.
Have you ever got the mysterious letter from your bank telling you that your credit card was going to be reissued? Yeah. Have you noticed it never tells you where the card was compromised at?
No, yeah, they don't give you that.
That's really annoying.
Yeah, they don't want to divulge that.
Right.
So, all right, so that's Orbitz, and that happened recently as well. Now let's talk about this. This one made the news, the national news. People were talking about this quite a bit, and our folks listening on Facebook may have forgotten this, but Spectre and Meltdown. These were humongous security incidents. So
there was Spectre 1 and Spectre 2. So three vulnerabilities.
Define what they were, when it happened, and what they were.
So these are pretty complicated, but the easiest way to think about it is that these are hardware architecture vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities in the actual physical processor that's inside of the computer.
Okay, so the processor inside the computer had a way for bad guys to exploit it.
Yes.
And that was discovered, and so the bad guys became aware that they can get in. Okay, And this particular incident, what you're talking about is this processor was virtually all computers in the world, right? I mean,
Pretty much.
that's what made this such a big deal. Am I right?
Well, it affected pretty much all the modern Intel processors. And then we don't want to just pick on Intel because very recently it's turned out that AMD has its own processor vulnerabilities. Intel had allegedly fixed the majority of this, so the Spectre and Meltdown, although there was with some cost of performance.
Right.
But we found out yesterday, due to a research white paper that was released, that there is now what looks like a third variant of Spectre, or very close to it, called branch scope.
Okay.
And it works almost the same way that Spectre 2 did, which is a speculative execution vulnerability.
What does that mean?
So the way Intel explains it is if you have a bunch of guys that are walking down a road, the speculative execution is like a scout that walks in the road in front of them, and he checks down road A and checks down road B and sees which one he thinks would be best for them, and then lets them know so they can know which road they're going to go down ahead of time.
Okay.
It makes them faster. They don't have to stop and make the decision themselves. So what the vulnerability does is it kind of grabs onto that scout and is able to cause problems from there.
Okay, so with the fact that these are the majority of modern day processors, and most businesses are operating on modern day processors, they have computers that were made in the last 3 to 5 to 6 years,
Right.
servers that were manufactured in the last 3 to 5 to 6 years. What can be done about that? What do businesses do? Unplug everything and
This is
hope for the best?
Yeah, you could unplug everything and toss it in the dumpster and just go back to pen and paper. That's obviously not very realistic at this point.
Nope.
The ship's kind of sailed for going back. This is really, really difficult to give strong advice on because every environment is different. So, we like to say, yes, go patch, go fix these problems. But what if you are hosting an app and your app is dependent on a database? And you go and you patch this and you degrade your performance by 30 to 40%.
Yeah, so one thing we know about being in the managed IT business at ASK is if you apply a patch without testing it first or understanding the environment you're patching, you could break things that previous to the patch worked, like applications. And they could be key line of business applications that you need to run your business.
Yeah, or depending on what industry, and you may have an SLA with a customer that guarantees them certain access.
So patch, yes, but patch intelligently or with the advice and counsel of someone who has expertise in that area that can help you.
Yeah, and a lot of the patching when we talk about it is operating systems and the applications that run on those operating systems. It becomes even harder when you get into things like hardware and firmware,
right?
Because they don't fall into any of the automated systems usually. There's a lot of manual process. I'd be interested to find out how many small organizations are just hearing about Spectre and Meltdown, or have never even had to monitor for this type of patching before, and so it's just not included in their regimen.
Yeah, and I guess what the Spectre and Meltdown taught me is that the threat is only getting stronger. I mean, it's not getting weaker. Now, the good news is the ability to combat that threat and the tools available and the solutions available to combat cybercrime are getting stronger too and more capable. And that's what your team does day in and day out, specializes in. So it's a war, right? It's a battle. Both sides are fighting for supremacy. But to ignore the problem is not an option, or at least do it at your own detriment.
Yeah, I mean, we have to monitor for stuff like this. We want to know about this as soon as possible before there's even active exploits for them. But it's an undertaking. If you're a small business, keeping on top of this while maintaining everything else is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, it has to become a key strategic business initiative. Cybercrime has to make it to that level. Well, thanks, Josh. That's it's scary stuff. But it's the world we live in, and it's, as I said, only going to get more scary. If you would like to get on a newsletter with more information and advice from Josh and his team on a monthly basis, they can send an email to, I think it's ess@justask.net.
That's right.
ess@justask.net. And if you have questions you'd like to discuss with Josh and his team or any of us at ASK, please reach out to us at justask.net or at 877-ASK for ASK. 877-ASK for ASK. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.